savings, invest from anywhere, finance your home, all things money.
This holiday at T-Mobile, it's not about how far we are. It's about how close we can be. So bring out the best deal on your iPhone 12.
All right, everyone. Great to see all of you out there at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's about 3:15 Eastern time, and we're just concluding the noon Eastern time window of college football. Aggies win a big one. Buckeyes on their way, and the style points are there for the Buckeyes as well. Texas A&M probably did not need them today against a quality opponent. We'll be taking your calls for the next half hour at 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. Nebraska just turned over Purdue on downs. The Boilers had made a bit of a furious comeback to get within 37-27 with a couple minutes left, driving down the field. But Nebraska's defense has held, and the Huskers should be in good shape at 37-27. Oklahoma State and TCU playing a heck of a game in Dallas-Fort Worth, 22-21 right now, with the Cowboys up in that one. And we'll have to check out some other scores. Group of 5 folks that are touting a number of your undefeated teams. Marshall going down in flames today to Rice. Rice was up a few minutes ago, 20-0 over Marshall. We'll check that score as well. Again, most of you probably locked in on the games right now, and I can totally understand that. I have set this 3:15 window to 3:45 each week to try to catch us at the end of the noon games and get us ready for the games to kick off at 3:45. And so, again, the important result of the day is Texas A&M holds off Auburn, and there was a key sequence in that game in which Auburn led 20-14. Texas A&M was driving, and there was a should-have-been interception by Auburn. McClain dropped the ball. Basically, the ball hit him. He made the perfect play on the tight end. Weidemeyer was in perfect position, read the coverage. Kellen Mond threw a horrible pass. McClain tipped it up in the air, should have picked it off at the goal line, tipped it up in the air for the Weidemeyer touchdown. Texas A&M led 21-20 because of that play and rode it home for the victory. And so this guy in particular, not real happy with that play for reasons I think you know. All right, let's see who's in the chat. Good to see Ballard here. Of course, the Tide goes up against LSU tonight at 8. And again, we've got an update from TCU with the Horned Frogs driving down 1 with 8.5 minutes left to play. The Oklahoma State Cowboys still have a slight chance of going to the Big 12 championship game. Slight chance there. Hey, Jobo, good to see you. Captain Trips, go Gators. Of course, Florida plays Tennessee coming up in about a half hour as well. We'll be all over that. We're going to have instant analysis of so many games this afternoon. It's going to make your head spin. And we will also let you know that what we've got planned tonight is to go live after the primetime games about 11 o'clock Eastern time, and then flip it on over to the Miami channel to give you some post-game analysis on Miami and Duke. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hunter from Alabama.
Hey, Hunter. How are you?
Good. A first-time caller.
Well, it's nice to hear from you.
Yeah. I think in this Auburn and Texas A&M game, A&M's defense didn't look as good as they had been.
True.
And Auburn had a chance to win this, and I don't see why Auburn is. I mean, I know Gus has got a big buyout and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just atrocious. I mean, I'm a big Alabama fan, but I mean, even as an Alabama fan, it's like the Iron Bowl is not even like this year wasn't even very interesting because of the fact that Auburn is garbage.
True. Well, what are your expectations for Auburn football? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just asking the question because I agree with much of what you have to say. Gus Malzahn, since he took that program to the BCS championship game in 2013, is, let me do the math real quick, 31. He is 31-26 in the SEC, 31-26. You would expect Auburn to be much better than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, here in the state of Alabama, football is a part of the culture here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean, as an Alabama fan, I want Auburn to be good until they play Alabama. Because it makes the Iron Bowl interesting.
Absolutely.
And it makes the SEC, the conference, the West particularly, it makes it more interesting to see who's going to go to the SEC championship every year.
Yep. Well, I'm going to agree, Hunter, with a lot that you had to say, but just because I'm the guy that I am, I'm going to push back on some of it. Just makes it a more interesting discussion, and because I'd like to raise a few points. So you do understand that Gus Malzahn has a better record against Nick Saban than the other top teams in the West. Better than LSU, better than Texas A&M.
Yeah, I mean, that's because, that's just a different dynamic of the game. I mean, when you get Alabama versus Auburn, it don't matter who's the coach. It's always going to be back and forth between the two teams because there's such a big rivalry and the emotions are high in these games. And when the emotions are high, anybody can win on any given Iron Bowl.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Alabama's been dominant in the seasons they've been dominant when Auburn's not been real good, just like this year. This year's a perfect example. Alabama was a 25, 26-point favorite. Would they win by 29? The rivalry didn't play that much into it. It wasn't like, oh, throw out the records. We don't know what's going to happen. We pretty much did know what was going to happen.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, okay, for example, when Nick Marshall was at Auburn and they had that big comeback against Alabama.
Yep.
I mean, nobody expected them to be able to come back like that. And so there's a little bit of I think there's a little bit truth to what I'm saying, not to the extent to the most extreme.
Oh, I do too.
But
I do
there
too.
is some truth in that. Let me ask you a question though on a different topic, right quick.
Yep.
This frustrates me as an Alabama fan, as an SEC guy.
Yeah.
Is it your perception? Because I've talked to people who in my community and friends of mine who are big college football fans, and I'm a college football fan in general. I mean, I'm not just an Alabama or an SEC guy.
Yep.
But it seems to me that the team that like ESPN and other teams and other outlets just seem to love Ohio State. And it just seems in the media loves Ohio State, and I cannot figure out why.
Okay. I see some truth in what you're saying. I think some Ohio State fans, so we do an Ohio State show here every week with 3 Ohio State beat writers, and they would tell you that ESPN and other main media outlets love the SEC, and because they built an SEC network, that they are biased toward the SEC. So let's all understand that, and I definitely, Hunter, appreciate that even as an Alabama fan, you're trying to be objective and neutral. And so I appreciate those fans that love their team with all that's within them, but still are able to step back and say, I want to be objective here and look at it. I think that there's a lot of Ohio State people, a lot of former players that have made their way into the media. So if you look at Kirk Herbstreit, so he's the #1 analyst at ESPN, former Ohio State guy. You've got Joey Galloway, one of their main guys, Ohio State guy. Chris Spielman was there for years and years and years at ESPN and ABC, Ohio State guy. So there's a lot of Ohio State players that have made their way to prominent positions in the media. So I think that might have something to do with it. Another thing might be that aside from the top schools in the SEC, and aside from, I guess, Clemson now, although Clemson's still not, they don't attract great TV ratings. There's still a newcomer to it. It's mostly the top of the SEC, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan get huge TV numbers. And Ohio State's part of that. Ohio State gets is, if you look at the top 10 rated TV games every year, they're all Ohio State, Michigan, and SEC related, all of them. And when I say all of them, one year it might be 9 out of 10, but it's basically all of them. So I think there's a favoritism toward the teams that people want to talk to, want to talk about, want to watch. I had a sit down with the head of ESPN Digital Media. This was maybe a year ago. And because of some things that I was offering them, and I let them know that if you go to even some huge football programs, take Virginia Tech, it's a top 25, 30 football program. I'm not talking about this particular team, but they've got a big following. They could make a lot of money. But if you go to the Virginia Tech football page on ESPN, you don't see Virginia Tech covered. They don't. And he basically told me flat out, there's about 5 schools we cover that we care about, and they move the needle and they drive all our clicks. And it's Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, few others tacked on, and that's about it. And we don't care about anybody else. There has to be a major story.
And in the last few years, it's been Clemson tacked on that list because Clemson's been a program of prominence.
Yeah.
Within the last 5 or 6 years, and I don't know. It's just sort of frustrating to me. And I know it's not, and I know I'm biased a little bit because I'm an Alabama fan, and I understand that. But on the same thing, just like you said, a lot of the guys in the media come from Ohio State. I think one of the most hilarious takes I've heard in the last 2 years is, in particular, is Skip Bayless said that Jim Harbaugh is a far better coach than Nick Saban. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of him trying to make that argument.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But that is one of the most horrible takes I've ever heard ever in sports.
It is. But some of the people that you mention, and because of the shows that they've created, they are looking for sensationalism, and they're looking for crazy opinions. And sometimes, I heard this was many years ago, and I'm going to let you go after this because we've got a guest coming on here. But many years ago, there was a huge college. It was, near the end of November, and ESPN was doing one of its, championship drive kind of shows where, there's a big debate over who should be the playoff teams. This was, 5-6 years ago. It might have been even predated the playoff. It might have been a BCS conversation. And I remember Kirk Herbstreit actually letting everybody know, he was like, because they gave him Georgia to argue for, and he didn't want to argue for, and he basically, in the middle of his conversation and argument with whomever, Pollock or somebody else, he was like, you know what? They gave me Georgia to argue. I don't believe Georgia should be in this. And he basically let it out that I was told to argue Georgia's point, even though I don't believe that they should be part of this. So a lot of it's just planned for clicks and for debate and to get people riled up, unfortunately. Now here, everything I say, I believe. I don't do it just to be sensational. Sometimes it's boring because it's what everybody else thinks, but if that's what I believe, then that's what I'm going to tell you. Other times it's going to be way outside the box and people are like, oh, you're just trying to get clicks. No, I'm just stating what I believe. And sometimes it's very mainstream and other times it's way outside the box. It's just whatever I believe is the truth and is logical. Hunter, I appreciate the call.
Thank you for taking my call. And,
absolutely.
I found your show, by the way, of Steve Dace.
Oh, great.
I listen to his political program and also his when he does his college football talk. So that's how I found your show, and I appreciate you taking my call.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you, Hunter. I appreciate it. Enjoy the day.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Again, a final score from the Plains. Auburn falls to Texas A&M. Entertaining football game, 31-20. We got Jamie Hancock on the line from Preps Nation to help us break down the Auburn and Texas A&M game. Jamie, I caught most of this. Would love to get your initial impressions of, in particular, how the Tigers played in this one.
Well, first, Mark, allow me to apologize to you for watching that debacle. And when you look at the game, the score is not indicative of what actually took place. Texas A&M absolutely dominated the Auburn Tigers in Jordan-Hare Stadium today, and there's no other way to put it. There was a time in the middle of the game where it looked competitive. It looked as if there were going to be some plays that you might look back at and say, okay, if this had happened or this hadn't happened. But at the end of the day, the hay that Texas A&M put in the barn, it started in the first quarter. It started in the first quarter with the time of possession that Texas A&M leaving Auburn's somewhat undermanned defense out on the field the entire first quarter. And part of that has to do with Auburn's offensive ineptitude in the first quarter. That really put the hay in the barn, and you saw it come home to roost in the fourth quarter for Texas A&M. Plain and simple.
That said, Jamie, Auburn had a 1-point lead. I did not mark down how much time was left in the game. This might have been early fourth quarter. Texas A&M's driving. McClain, as mentioned during the broadcast, did all the right things in coverage, read the quarterback's eyes, found the tight end, Weidemeyer, was right in position for a pick. It would have hit him right in the forehead had he not tipped it. And Texas A&M scores kind of a lucky touchdown in which Mon made a mistake. Otherwise, they take over at the 20 and they're up by a point, and maybe they've got a fighter's chance to finish it off from there.
I was working on what I was looking to talk about throughout the game, and I wrote down notes. I have them right here. It's plain and simple. That was with about 14 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. However, 14-15 left in the fourth quarter, 3rd and 11. Mon rolls out to his right, completes the pass. A lot of people want to say it's an incomplete pass. I don't know. It's 50-50. I'm not concerned about that one. If you go to that same play, 14-15 in the fourth quarter, 3rd and 11, Kobe Wooden was moved from defensive end to defensive tackle several times during the game. On that play, he beats 55 left guard like he stole something. The young man reaches out, grabs him by the neck, and pulls him down. There's no call. There's no call on that. On the same play, they complete the pass 3rd and 11. Now, if Auburn had played better throughout the game and had kept it close right there at the end, then I can sit here and get on my soapbox and complain about several holding calls in roughly the same setting with the same two players. But because the wheels completely came off in the fourth quarter, you weren't able to stand up. There's nobody that can fight for you there about the no calls on the holding, which greatly benefited Texas A&M because they are so physical up front. You can go back to the McClain interception, like you said. That was about 2 plays later. It should have been 3rd and 21 instead of a first down. That being said, I would love to take up those arguments, but I really cannot because of what Texas A&M did. You got outgained by almost 200 yards at home. You got physically manhandled. A&M's got a great front, great offensive line. I'm not as impressed with Texas A&M on defense because I think a lot of that had to do with some ineptitude and the fact that Texas A&M's offense stayed on the field so long. I believe Texas A&M can be had on defense, but the credit to their offensive line for doing what they did, because everybody loses sight of those 5 guys. But, people want to talk about Spiller. People want to talk about Smith. People want to talk about Mon. Let me tell you, Texas A&M's success is all about those 5 guys up front. Period. Kellen Mond did a good job of managing the football game. He's not a marvelous quarterback. The running backs, I think they're pretty solid. You take them out from behind those 5 monsters, and let's see what happens. That's the best offensive line I've seen all year. Texas A&M's offensive line did a marvelous job. And part of that is Auburn lacking depth, but those guys were brutal. And I give them all the credit for that football game. And I give Jimbo Fisher credit for this. He knows it, and he stays behind those 5 cats, and he's riding them to a number 5 ranking with those 5 offensive linemen.
Now, I am a big fan of Isaiah Spiller. I do like him and think he's a really good player. Flip it over to the Auburn side at the running back position. and I'm about to pull the numbers up here, but there was a lot of Sean Shivers throughout the game. He did get banged up a little bit, shaken up, but they wrapped up his ankle. He was good to go, came back in. And then sometime in the third quarter, they found Tank Bigsby again, and then they would bring him out, and he had the one huge run, had some other nice runs. How do you feel about the way they utilized the two running backs?
We didn't see Bigsby until the second quarter, and it makes me wonder if he's still having problems with that hip, and if he needs to play in spurts where he gets warmed up and gets out on the field and plays, and basically until that drive is over. And once he sits down, maybe it stiffens up on him. I'm not sure. It's hard to really criticize them for that, the way that they're playing him, because we don't really know what's going on in the training room there. I would have to believe that if Tank Bigsby was healthy, fully healthy, and able to go for 25 carries, he would be getting 25 carries. In fairness to Sean Shivers, Auburn people over the last 2 or 3 years have said, oh, he's too small, he's this, he's that. I don't want to hear that garbage one more time, that young man is too small or too anything. He may be too short, but this is not basketball. That kid plays hard. He runs physical. He is extraordinarily physical with the football. Now, Tank Bigsby, the one thing about him, he always falls forward. Even when he loses a yard or two, if you go back and look at Bigsby, he falls forward. He's very physical in the nature that he just imposes himself. Sean Shivers shows you absolute guts every time he takes the football, because he is one of the shorter, smaller people on the field, ever how you want to put it. You go back and watch the film, he punished Texas A&M defenders at the end of every play. That kid played hard. So I love what I saw from Shivers. He is not Tank Bigsby. I would like to see a little bit more of Mark Anthony Richards. But I can't criticize the coaching staff for the usage of Tank Bigsby, because at the end of the day, I don't really know what's going on in the training room with that young man. I would have to believe that if he were fully healthy, he would be on the field more than he was today. So no criticism for the play usage of Tank Bigsby.
Auburn came in as a 5-point underdog against Texas A&M. I was feeling pretty good about my upset pick there for about 3 quarters, but they fall 31-20 to Texas A&M. It'll be interesting to see the Aggies 2 more times out to try to complete a 9-1 season. Maybe they get some college football playoff love. We shall see. They're at number 5. What else stands out to you in regards to efforts by either team, and what's up ahead?
I'll start with Texas A&M real quick, because they won the game. They deserve to get the first part of the comment. Jimbo Fisher and his coaching staff know exactly who they are. That's impressive. Really glad to see a football coach who has chosen not to be so smart that he can't coach his football team. Many of our football coaches want to show you how smart they are, and they overcook the product. He didn't do that. He has not done that. Kellen Mond is who he is. He's a game manager. You get behind that offensive line, you got talented running backs, but I mean, how talented can they? All 3 of them look like Saquon Barkley behind that offensive line. So they're either all 3 professional running backs, or they're good, and that offensive line is just marvelous. Either way. Also, for Texas A&M's offense, they're not really good at wide receiver. However, if you look at them formationally, what they do is they know that, so they use a lot of bunch sets and a lot of stack sets, and that allows them to not give you the opportunity to press them at the line of scrimmage as much as you would like, because you're not in fear of them beating you deep. Well, you stack and you bunch, and that makes you have to back off and run some swaps. Auburn will go to the Auburn side. They didn't do that. Seth Williams, 4 targets all day. You want to know why? Because he's being double covered. The main reason he's being double covered is because it's obvious where he's lining up on every part of the formation. There's never any bunches or stacks when you look at Seth Williams. And when you have a receiver that's that good, you can't let somebody Bill Belichick you and double him and take him away from you. You've got to use some motion with him. You've got to use some stacks and do some things that allow you to get him free. The other big thing is Bo Nix. Bo Nix's feet, whether it's in the passing game or the running game, Bo Nix's feet will tell you how good Auburn is. Again, I'm not a Bo Nix sympathizer or a Bo Nix detractor. First quarter, he was awful. He was awful. He didn't get into a rhythm. He was awful. Yes, he missed that play. Why? Because he's fading to his left because his feet. When did Bo Nix become successful with his feet? We talked about it last week. Get him involved in the running game. All of a sudden, he's better. Let him get hit. All of a sudden, he's better. That young man really looked good while he was using his feet running. And that also got him into a rhythm throwing the football. And so Bo Nix, and this is, I'm going to throw you out a couple names here, and you go to the New Orleans Saints. There are 2 quarterbacks for the New Orleans Saints. He looks similar to both of them. All right. He's a whole lot closer to Taysom Hill than he is to Drew Brees. You let the young man do what he does, run the football and get involved emotionally, you'll see a better Bo Nix.
No question about that in regards to that comparison. Bo went 15 for 23 for $144, no picks. Seth Williams. So just to clarify something you said about the way they're using Seth Williams, because I noticed the same thing, but I didn't want to say it because I didn't watch every play of the game. I'm trying to watch like 3 games. But yeah, they would put him by himself on one side when I say all the time, again, just the plays that I noticed, and they would stack the other 3 on the other side. Why wouldn't they, to your point, mix that up?
More often than not, Seth is on a single receiver side or he's outside of a slot. And so that makes it a whole hell of a lot easier for the defense to take your corner, bump him, play underneath with the corner safety over the top. And if I was the defense, I would do the exact same thing. But when it comes to Seth Williams, he's so valuable. You have to almost look at what the Falcons do with Julio Jones. They line him up outside. They line him up in the slot. They run him in motion. They do so many different things so that you can't simply just bracket cover him and take him away. Now, also one thing that you see from some of these great receivers is the coaches say, I don't care, bracket him. I'm going to throw it to him anyway. Nix right now probably doesn't have that kind of confidence. He did it one time and threw into coverage, and it was a horrible throw. It was early in the game, actually, up the seam. So there's some fear there. But I think coaching-wise, instead of leaving that on Bo Nix, you try to schematically put Seth Williams in some spots to where you cannot bracket him. You're not comfortable where he's going to be. Line him up at tight end once or twice with his hand down. What are you going to do then? You're going to cover him with a linebacker? I bet you don't. So it's just several different things you can do. Is schematically, would that be considered backyard football? Maybe. But I'm not going to let you take my best player from me. It's not going to happen. So I'm going to put him where I may line him up at tailback. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I once or twice a game, I would do some things to be creative with him. Another criticism offensively that I have is the tight ends. They were nowhere to be found today. They did attempt the one pass to Frazier, which I did like to see. That was good. No other attempts. Pegues, non-factor out of the backfield in the passing game. The other tight ends, Deal and Schenker, not a factor. So and another thing about that, in fairness to the coaches, Auburn didn't get into a rhythm. So maybe Chad Morris never got into a full rhythm of his play calling. That could happen. And again, that's a credit to Texas A&M's offense, not their defense, their offense. Texas A&M's offense controlled this football game on both sides of the ball. So very much a credit to their offense. I'm going to say mostly that offensive line and Jimbo Fisher. I'm not a Jimbo Fisher lover. I don't believe he's going to lead them to the promised land like his contract says. However, he was smart enough to do what he did with the talent that he has, and they were dominant today. The score does not tell you how dominant they were.
Yeah, Texas A&M wins over Auburn 31-20. Tigers fall to 5-4, and A&M now 7-1. 2 games left for them to try to make the Cali football playoff appearance. Everybody follow Jamie Hancock at Preps Nation. Go to Twitter, Preps Nation. I just had his banner up here. Jamie Hancock joining us to talk Auburn football. Jamie, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a great discussion. We always learn a lot from you.
Mark, I enjoy it each and every time. I've got the grill fired up, maybe a drink or 2 in there. But I can tell you this, the game I want to see is Coastal Carolina and BYU.
Okay.
For obvious reasons. I mean, everybody, you got to love the fact of the little guys doing what they're doing. The fact that they put this game together on a Wednesday, that neither one of them was afraid to put the game together. Yeah, they both need it, but that takes guts.
It does.
You put a game together on a Wednesday and said, hey, come play us. And BYU says, we'll be there.
I love that too.
I'm rooting for Coastal Carolina from the sense because I know a kid or two on the team, Trey Carter, the right guard, number 63, is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. No, he's not sexy. He is sexy of 6'1", 305 pounds of redheaded, built like a barrel, but he's tough as nails. But BYU is one of the most physical football teams I've seen this year. So if you want to watch a pretty good football game, Jamie Chatwell and Coastal Carolina will come out and play. But Sataki and BYU are big and nasty. And
I'm looking forward to it. I probably won't watch it live, but I DVR about 17 games a day on Saturday. So I'll have to DVR steaming because I'm trying to watch everybody at the same time. But Jamie, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a great conversation.
Hey, have a great day, Mark, and I look forward to joining you soon.
Our man, Jamie Hancock. The 3:30 games have kicked off, so certainly I want to run to get to those. But if anybody wants to call me that has anything else, we'll be back here late night after the primetime window. So right about 11 o'clock Eastern time, you'll see the notification come out soon, 11 o'clock Eastern time after the primetime games. And then I'm going to jump on over just because I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm going to jump on over to our Miami channel after the 11 o'clock live stream, go over there and wrap up Miami and Duke. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Navy Thomas 8, buddy.
Navy Thomas, you got to win today.
I have a story for you to blow your mind.
Oh, boy.
Between Nebraska and Purdue.
Yeah.
But the refs had 233 yards penalized. They almost won the damn game for themselves. Even though Nebraska snuck through and won, but oh my God.
Well,
233 yards. 100 on each side.
Okay.
You can look it up on ESPN.
Sure. Well, I'm
Look at that.
going to watch the game. I only saw maybe about 5 plays because I was watching 2 other games, but I'm going to be watching that game here in the next couple of days, so I'll be looking out for that.
I don't think it's even worth the time to look it up. Just throwing the flags. Every third play, there was a flag. There was a flag. There was a flag. Oh, this play, there's 2 plays. 2 flags. Oh, my God, it was miserable. But Nebraska won 37-27. But, oh, my God, this is pathetic, miserable. So that's all I wanted to bring to you.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Well, I'm glad you got a win today.
Talk to you later.
All right, Tom. Have a good one. All right, everyone. It's great to see everybody in the live chat again. Thanks for stopping by. And again, we'll be here late night tonight after the primetime games. There's a slew of good ones, we hope. Do your Amazon shopping. Use our link. And I've got another call. I'll take one more. I want to go watch some football. And also have to do a bunch of instant analysis of these noon games. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, or as I like to call him, the man that gives college football its voice. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing just fine, David. How are you?
Excellent. Just happy to see the Buckeyes back on the field. Look good today. All things being equal, without an offensive line.
Sure.
I thought they, put in a pretty good performance. Some improvement by the defense, which is good. And, just happy to see Coach Johnson get his first win as a Buckeye. So, overall, about as good as can be expected, shorthanded. Did you get a chance to watch much of it?
I watched the first half, and then I went elsewhere.
Okay. By the way, I listened to Merrill's picks again, Mark. I go with Mark Rogers' picks now. I've got to say, I've had bad luck with your guy, Steve Merrill.
I'm trying to think. What was his pick this week? I don't remember. What was his pick? Did they already play? Do you know what his pick was?
Well, I mean, the one pick that he was talking about, did he have did he call Texas A&M over Auburn?
I believe David, I know I'm sitting there recording it, but I don't remember. I don't remember what he picks. Actually, the purpose of the segment is that he just goes through kind of the trends, and I don't know that he's necessarily giving us a prediction on those 3 games.
Okay.
He gives us a prediction on the game that's on Patreon.
Okay. Well, I've taken Bama as a favorite. Okay, I like them minus the 20. I think they're just going to lay the wood to poor LSU.
Yeah, I do too.
And then I'm taking. I was also thinking about Clemson tonight, but I don't know about that one. And then I was looking at your picks on Patreon, Mark.
Yeah.
Did you like that one?
Did I like which one?
Oh, you were with the Clemson game.
Yeah, I like Clemson to cover.
21.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also taking. I took Wisconsin too, by the way, Mark. I don't know if that was safe, but I took Wisconsin.
Yeah, I like Indiana with the points.
You think even with the backup quarterback, they keep that close?
Well, I think their backup quarterback might eventually be better than their starter.
Really? I mean, Penix was playing pretty well up until last week. I mean, that was kind of his first real clunker, you know?
Yeah, it was a clunker too. Don't be surprised if this. Don't be surprised if this Indiana backup quarterback's pretty good.
All right. Well, I'll have to make it back on Alabama and then maybe Clemson later. So, all right. Hey, by the way, are you on the live stream tonight?
I sure am.
Hey, I heard you on Pigskin Pete last night. By the way, good break. No, I liked it because I called in and kind of had a breakdown on the playoff too, and I like your analysis. By the way, kind of invoking the NFL in there a little bit, which was, I like that. I'm actually in more agreement with you, and that's why I'm going to give you a call back later and talk about it, that playoff, because I am warming up more and more to the idea of an 18 mark, but you went over a 16 team with a reasonable. I'm not there yet.
Well, no. I'm not with a 16 either, but did you hear those teams that would have played in a 16 team last year?
Oh yeah,
it was packed with name brand programs. Like I didn't see a bad game in there. The 16 seed was Auburn. The 15 was Michigan. Michigan last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And not that I'm looking for name brands to be playing in the playoff, but let this one. As soon as somebody tries to tell you that there's going to be a bunch of 8-4 and 7-5 teams in the playoff, if we go to conference champions, history tells us no. I ran an 8-team playoff through the last 20 college football seasons. The worst team that we would have had, the worst record, was that Washington team a couple of years ago that played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl that went 10-3 in the regular season.
Right.
It's the worst team that's going to be in the playoff.
Right. A high percentage of the conference winners each year are usually, I bet if you looked at every conference winner out of all the Power Fives, let's say for the last 20, and maybe you have because you do an excellent job of breaking it down, but I bet if you looked at the conference winners, let's say for the last 20 years, or you would probably find 80%, maybe 90% of them are 2-loss teams or less. Wouldn't you say? I don't know if you've done that breakdown, Mark. Have you?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That this Washington team that went 10-3.
Yeah. Okay.
During the playoff era, that's the worst team that would have been in the playoff.
Right, I was using a larger sample size over
and there's
time, but I think
there should be a larger sample size, and I will go through all that once we hit the off season because I want to show people what an 8-team playoff would be like, and also I don't understand people's lack of logic regarding we don't have enough data to be kicking conferences and eliminating them from participation. And I respect Pete. I wouldn't do a show with him once a week if I didn't. But for him to
I
say,
know.
"Oh, do you want a Pac-12 team to be in the playoff this year, losing by 80 points?" Well, what gives us indication that just because Oregon or USC is going to be in the playoff this year, that they're going to lose by 80 points? Oklahoma was down by 5 touchdowns at halftime last year, and it doesn't seem like they're being blackballed from the playoff forever. We have 2 samples of the Pac-12 participating in the playoff. One was a Washington team that in 2016 that played an Alabama team that was running roughshod over everyone. And it was a fairly competitive game, and it was a 17-7 game into the fourth quarter, and it was a 24-7 final. Was it close? No, it wasn't close, but it wasn't an embarrassment. And then our other example is Oregon beating Florida State by 39 points and then losing the national championship game. That's all the Pac. And the Pac-12 is taking this just beating over how they would be embarrassed. We don't have any examples of it, but that they would be embarrassed if they were in the playoff.
Well, Mark, if you've broken down how they've done against non-conference opponents over the last, let's say, 5-6 years in the past.
Okay, so what I do, David, just to answer your question, and Missouri just kicked a last-second field goal to beat Arkansas 50-48. What I do each and every year, and I failed to do it this offseason, and so if you just started watching me in the last year, is, and we can't do it, unfortunately, this season, is I take all the results of all the Power 5 games between conferences, all the non-conference games. And I just don't say, okay, the Big Ten went 10-8 against the other 4 conferences. It is what it is, 10-8. I give weight and value to each game. Because obviously, if Ohio State goes out and beats Oregon, and if Oregon wins the Pac-12, that game should be given more value for Ohio State in the Big Ten than if Ohio State beats Oregon State when they are going 1-11. So I seed all the conferences, so I give weight to each game, and then I show everyone both the records of each conference against the other 4 conferences, but also the weight of each game and how it should be measured, and then I come up with a ranking.
Right. Well, what I would say too, Mark, just last point on this, and I saw this, we both saw this with the Big Ten, and certain conferences, whether it be the bowl games or big game atmospheres, you know what happens is they get that bad reputation. If they do take a blowout, or if they do take some bad losses over the course of a few years, people start to really rank on the Big Ten. Remember how that happened after Ohio State's national championship game losses? You know what I mean? And I think that the Pac-12 is kind of going through this cycle. I think the bottom line is, I think there's some good teams in that conference. I don't think that conference is, bottom line, ever going to be the same until their number 1 program, which is USC, becomes USC again. I think Washington and Oregon are solid programs, but I think USC has got to be your bell cow program. Has to be good, I think, to a certain extent for your conference to be good.
Sure.
You agree?
Yeah. All right, David. Yeah. I'm going to run.
Right, Mark,
thanks for the call. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye. We will be back to talk football with everybody following the primetime window. Appreciate everybody in the live chat. See you soon.